The Book of the Secrets of Enoch. This new fragment of early literature came to light through certain manuscripts which were recently found in Russia and Serbia, and so far as is yet known, has been preserved only in Slavonic. Well, more has been found since in Armenia and that, but yeah, little is known of its origin, except that in its present form it was written somewhere about the beginning of the Christian era. Now, during the time of Dr. John Dee, there was talk about what would have been in it, but there was no sign that he had any reference to that, so the Enochian material is, you could say, at least a representation, if not a transmission of some spiritual experience. Its final editor was a Greek, and the place of its composition, Egypt. Its value lies in the unquestioned influence which it has exerted on the writers of what they call the New Testament, some of the dark passages of the latter being all but implicit without its aid, although the very knowledge that such a book ever existed was lost for probably 1,200 years, at least to the general public. It nevertheless was much used by both Christian and heretic in the early centuries and forms a most valuable document in any study of the forms of early Christianity, and even Rabbinic Judaism, you could say, the Book of Enoch would have been existed, well, maybe not quite, because you say the Mishnah of 200 BCE, but after that period anyways. The writing appeals to the reader who thrills to lend wings to his thoughts and fly to mystical realms. Here is a strange dramatization of eternity, with views on creation, anthropology, and ethics, as the world was made in 6 days, so they say. So its history would be accomplished in 6,000 years, or 6 million years, maybe. And this would be followed by 1,000 years of rest, possibly when the balance of conflicting moral forces has been struck and human life has reached the ideal state. At its close would begin the 8th eternal day, when time should be no more. 1. An account of the mechanisms of the world, showing the machinery of the sun and the moon in operation, astronomy, and an interesting ancient calendar. See chapter 15 through 17, also 21. What the world was like before creation, see chapter 24. Chapter 26 is especially picturesque and a unique account of how Satan was created. Chapter 29. There was a wise man, a great artificer, and the Lord conceived love for him, and received him, that he should behold the uppermost dwellings, and be an eyewitness of the wise and great and inconceivable and immutable realm of God Almighty, of the very wonderful and glorious and bright and many-eyed station of the Lord's servants, and of the inaccessible throne of the Lord, and of the degrees and manifestations of the incorporeal hosts, and of the ineffable ministration of the multitude of the elements, and of the various apparition, and the inexpressible singing of the hosts of cherubim, and of the boundless light. Now that's quite a bit for one verse compared to these other 10 verses of this chapter. At that time, he said, when my 165th year was completed, I begat my son Methuselah. After this too, I lived 200 years and completed of all the years of my life 365 years. On the first day of the first month, I was in my house alone and was resting on my couch and slept. And when I was asleep, great distress came up into my heart, that I was weeping with my eyes in sleep, and I could not understand what this distress was, or what would happen to me. And there appeared to me 2 men exceedingly big, so that I never saw such on the earth. Their faces were shining like the sun, their eyes too were like a burning light. From their lips was fire coming forth with clothing, singing the various kinds in appearance, purple. Their wings were brighter than gold, their hands whiter than snow, and they were standing at the head of my couch, and began to call me by my name. And I arose from my sleep and saw clearly those 2 men standing in front of me. And I saluted them, and was seized with fear And the appearance of my face was changed from terror, and those men said to me, Have courage, Enoch, do not fear, the eternal God sent us to thee, and lo, thou shalt today ascend with us into heaven, and thou shalt tell thy sons and all thy household all that they shall do without thee on earth in thy house, and let no one seek thee till the Lord return thee to them. Now by Lord, I'm sure they mean God as a noun and verb, Yahweh. And I made haste to obey them, and went out from my house, and made to the doors as it was ordered me, and summoned my sons Methuselah and Regem and Gadad, and made known to them all the marvels those men had told me, too, the instruction how Enoch instructed his sons. Listen to me, my children. I know not whither I go. Now, therefore, my children, I tell you, turn not from God before the face of the vain, who made not heaven and earth, for these shall perish, and those who worship them. And may the Lord make confident your hearts in the fear of him. And now, my children, let no one think to seek me until the Lord return to you. 3. Of Enoch's assumption, how the angels took him into the first heaven. It came to pass, when Enoch had told his sons, that the angels took him on their wings and bore him up to that first heaven and placed him on the clouds. And there I looked, and saw again, and I looked higher, and I saw the ether, and they placed me on the first heaven, and showed me a great sea, greater than the earthly sea, a very great sea. And we'll get into 4 through the other chapters later.